means keeping your family protected.
Another healthcare head bites the dust. The woman running the Minnesota system just stepping down. She was vacationing in sunny Costa Rica while her state's exchange, well, it was beached, struggling with technical problems and low enrollment. Welcome, everyone. I'm Charles Payne in for Neil Cavuto. In just the past 4 weeks, folks leading troubled healthcare exchanges in 4 states stepping down. Yeah, that's losing one a week. But the woman leading the weakest rollout of all Obamacare, well, she's still standing. Health Secretary Kathleen Sebelius is keeping her job, even though the federal rollout has been an unmitigated disaster. The political prospect editor, Kayleigh McEnany, on why she says Sebelius has to go. Americans for Tax Reform President Grover Norquist on the cost and the taxes associated with this mess, and Roll Call's Shira Toplitz on the political implications. Kayleigh, let's start with you. She's got to go.
She's got to go. You know what, Charles? What does it take to lose a government job these days? It's truly unreal with this administration. You know, you had James Clapper, who basically committed perjury, and he got to stay, and Eric Holder and Susan Rice, who was promoted. Can we be more
specific, though? Because we started this thing off talking about government officials losing their jobs and states. What does it take to lose a job in this administration? You've got one heck of a shield there.
You do. You absolutely do. I mean, let's be honest. This woman basically spent $500 million on a malfunctory website that's 4 times the cost of the original iPhone. You had her hire a group from Canada that had already messed up computer systems in Ontario, and then to keep her around, it's truly unfathomable.
Although I think they added another person. They may have add a new title or a new, like the chief something or something.
It wouldn't surprise me. As of mid-November, they had not fired a person.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so Kayleigh brought up cost, Grover. That's your wheelhouse. Let's talk about this because it feels like every day the number gets higher and higher.
Well, what we've got so far is $677 million spent on the federal website, $4.5 billion given to the state exchanges to go do their thing. In Oregon, there's about $155 million. Minnesota spent $155 million of federal money. That was what the person was fired for. At some point, you know, if you shoplift $20, you go to jail. These guys are wasting millions and billions and not losing their pensions.
You know, Shira, that's just it. They're not losing their pensions and not getting fired. Surely, though, there's got to be some political ramifications for all of this.
Exactly, especially at the national level. That's been a huge criticism of the president throughout all of this, and frankly, throughout a whole lot of his administration, he's been unwilling to fire people. At the best, they kind of forces them to resign. In fact, the most prominent example I can think of the president firing someone is the general who spoke some not so kind things about the president in Rolling Stone in his first term. That's the last big firing I remember, and I think that was a pretty special case.
Yeah, that was a pretty special case. So let's get back to this whole thing, Kayleigh. Kathleen Sebelius, she's there. She's been insulated somewhat, and she's had some extraordinarily embarrassing moments. You know, just some of the public things and the site crashing on her in front of reporters and everything else. Where do we go from here, then? How does this play out?
We need a president who will take charge and say the buck stops with me, and not just say it because he has said that, but truly mean it and truly take control, meaning letting people like Kathleen Sebelius go.
Do you think, though, that the president, because a lot of what I see with respect to this whole Obamacare, the law and the exchange, was driven by ego and ideology, that same ego and ideology seems to govern the idea that letting anyone go is not necessarily an indictment of that person, but an indictment of the president himself.
You're entirely right. It's ego and it's ideology. And you know what's so funny is the president is willing to let his own ideology, because he is an ideologue, get in the way of his presidency. His approval rating, 43%. And he's not willing to take a step back, reevaluate, and make changes in the way that Clinton did, the way that Reagan did, and the way that Bush did, and come to the middle and negotiate. He's just not willing to do it.
So sure, with that plummeting approval rating, the president either has to pivot here or he just double downs. He says, it doesn't really matter. I'm not worried about near-term legacy. I'm trying to create a different sort of legacy, even if it means leaving Democrats in a lurch for the midterm elections and perhaps even the next presidential campaign.
Yeah, there's definitely a whole lot of truth to what you just said. The president has never had a good relationship with Congress. Sure, he's fundraising for a lot of Democrats for 2014, but I don't expect to see him out on the trail a lot, probably in part because a lot of Democrats won't want to campaign with him. But it's not part of his legacy, anything having to do with Congress. From everything I've heard from people who met with the president, especially people on Capitol Hill, aides and members, the president has shown no interest in any kind of congressional dealings. And I think that has really been a huge and undercovered fault in his administration, and one of the reasons this health care law has been such a mess.
So back to you, Grover, on the costs. You mentioned Minnesota, $150 million. That came out of everyone's pocket. You know, how does the federal government give money to states? And I didn't realize they were doing this. Is this unlimited? Who's watching the story here?
Well, it was $4.5 billion that went out to all the states that did their own state exchanges as opposed to the federal exchange. That's a lot of walking around money. A lot of money was given to people to, do studies about what they were thinking about doing. They really just throw money at it. There are, in addition to this spending, 20 different tax increases in Obamacare. And I think in between firing Sebelius and others and doing nothing, how about beginning to do what the president said he was going to do, which was to have a transparent administration? Let's have the numbers of how many people have really signed up, not how many people test drove the car, how many people wrote a check to buy the car, how many people bought insurance, not thought about it, and how many people are going online. We could have that transparency. Those are known numbers. The only reason to hide them from the American people.
Let's be honest. The reason we don't get the numbers is because they're embarrassing. They don't want it. If the numbers were at 6.5 million right now, wouldn't it be on the headlines of every newspaper? Wouldn't we see the Rose Garden celebration every day?
Yes, we would, which is why we suspect and why it's not credible when they announce, and some people write headlines, oh, things are getting fixed. If they're getting fixed, let's see the numbers in front of the American people in real time. Sebelius has said she hopes to get us some numbers next year.
Okay, and real quick back to you, Kayleigh. We've talked before about the underpinnings of young people. In other words, how many young people have to step up to the plate? Now, it drives me crazy when I hear that on one hand and I hear them brag about the fact that you can actually just hang out with mom and dad until you're 26. Which one is it going to be?
Yeah, they have to have the young people, and the young people are not signing up, and they will not sign up. So it's going to go into a death spiral. Young people will not sign up, premiums will rise, and Obamacare might just be destabilized by my generation.
Boy, I think some people want it to happen even before then. But it does look bad, and it does seem to me, to Grover's point, I bet you 20 taxes just to start. You guys are fantastic. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again real soon. Fox Business.